Hey everyone, I'm Mayor, the coach of Litton on a Prayer, and this is week 5 of the Chill Draft League. This week we're up against the Tennessee Tropiuses. Now, this team is coached by a fellow named Rohith, and Rohith was the champion of Season 1, and he is currently undefeated so far this season. Like, really undefeated. Like, he hasn't even lost a single individual battle yet. And to top it all off, I've never actually beaten him in a best of 3, so I am super nervous about this match. Now, moving on to his team, it's pretty obvious that it's faster and has more immediate power than mine. Furthermore, it has an excellent array of type coverage, and it has a lot of physical attackers that line up pretty well against my specially bulky team. However, that doesn't mean that this is hopeless. Because my opponent's team has mostly physical attackers, I can use that to my advantage. Will-O-Wisp is an effective way to cripple a large percentage of my opponent's team, and I can also try various ways of raising my physical defense. More on that later. In addition, my opponent doesn't have the bulkiest team himself, so with good positioning and some good damage control, I should be able to outdamage him. Finally, while I think Trick Room would be advantageous to me here, I can't help but notice that my two Trick Room sweepers, Caparaja and Regice, have some rough matchups against a lot of things I expect to see from my opponent. Also, those two absolutely need speed control in this week's matchup, and I can't guarantee that I'll always have it. Taking a closer look at my opponent's team, I expect for sure that he will bring Dragapult, Comfey, Rotom, and Mamoswine. I'm expecting the Dragapult to be a physical sweeper with a lot of bulk, and I'm expecting it to be holding a weakness policy that is activated by Comfey. That setup just seems to make a lot of sense since I have no real way of stopping it, and it hits my whole team really hard. But honestly, it's not Dragapult that I'm most worried about this week. Overall, my team doesn't have the best matchup against my opponent, but I think that it is decent into Dragapult. What I'm really worried about this week are Rotom and Mamoswine. Rotom is just a really tough matchup for my team, and I don't have many ways of dealing with it. Mamoswine threatens big damage on literally everything I have. Also, while I do expect the weakness policy to be on Dragapult, I need to at least entertain the idea of it being elsewhere. For example, on Mamoswine, which is activated by Comfey's Giga Drain. Something like that could just as easily wreak havoc on my team. For his last two, I expect that they will be some combination of Zarina, Urshifu, and Grimmsnarl. I can't say for sure which two, but I'm fairly confident that my opponent's going to round out his team with two of these three. Zarina is probably the weakest choice of the three because it's slower and a lot of my team matches up well against it type-wise. But it does have a lot of power and it has excellent type coverage. And of course, it shuts down all of the fun prankster things that Sableye might try and do to get control of the battle. Urshifu is probably the strongest of these three. It's fast, it's strong, water hits my team really well, and it goes right through Protect. This is probably the one I'm most expecting to see, although it doesn't quite bring the same amount of utility as the other two options in this row. Now, Grimmsnarl also seems likely, as it looks to be his main source of damage control, with screens and with special attack drops through Spirit Break. And while it's probably not likely, I could just as easily see Comfey activating a weakness policy on Grimmsnarl if he wanted to run an offensive one. Although I don't think that's likely, since I think he already has enough offensive power and Grimmsnarl is better as a defensive tool here. So, moving on to my team this week. To start with, instead of a support Togekiss, I'm running a bulky offensive Crit Kiss set. I anticipate Togekiss being my primary attacker because its coverage lets it hit so much of what I expect my opponent to bring for super effective damage. In fact, the only thing that it doesn't hit really hard is that Rotom Heat. So with some support next to it, I'm hoping the Togekiss can really carry this game for me. Next up is Moltres. Now, you're probably looking at this one and thinking it looks pretty familiar, and you'd be right. There isn't a whole lot of variety in Moltres sets. This particular one is max speed because I do want it to outrun that Rotom and Mamoswine. I'd like to be able to get a little damage and maybe if I'm lucky, a flinch or two with Fiery Wrath. Also, if Togekiss, for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to be working out, Moltres is a pretty decent secondary Dynamax option. Now, Garchomp is one that I'm not super psyched about bringing this week. I think that it doesn't have that many great matchups. But that Rotom Heat that my opponent has convinced me to bring Garchomp because it's my one true counter. Since Garchomp is not a max candidate this week, I've gone and switched up its moves a little bit. Ground attacks really aren't doing me any good here, so I'm just giving it coverage. Iron Head for Mamoswine, Poison Jab for Zarina and Comfy, and Dragon Claw for everything else. Also, this week's Garchomp is Jolly, because if that Urshifu shows up, I want Garchomp to be faster. Blaziken is another mon I'm not sure about bringing, but it does have okay matchups against Mamoswine and Rotom, and that convinced me to bring it. This Blaziken is also got somewhat of a supportive role. As you can see, it's got coaching. The idea behind that is if I can get off 1 or 2 coaching, I can raise my team's physical defense, which could be helpful against my opponent's mostly physical attacking team. I don't know if this is going to work or if I'm even going to get a chance to try it. It's just an idea I've had for a while now, and this week seems as good as any to give it a shot. Now, I'm anticipating relying on Sableye a lot this week. That Prankster ability it has can give me speed control and damage control. I'm just hoping that it stays around long enough for it to help get some KOs. I think the main thing that I need to watch out for is my opponent's Zarina, because if it switches in, it can just shut down any of the Prankster shenanigans it might be trying to pull. Last but not least, I've thrown Foul Play onto it this week. As I've said many times, my opponent's team looks like it's mostly physical attackers, and so Foul Play is probably pretty good here. Also, I've learned from experience that when Dragapult is at +2, a Stab Foul Play is a one-hit KO, even if that Dragapult is Dynamaxed. So, it's always possible it could be helpful in that regard as well. Finally, I'm running this team out with Musharna. While I'm not running either of my true Trick Room sweepers, my team is in general slower, so Trick Room could be a good way for me to take speed control if push comes to shove. Also, I anticipate my opponent's Comfy having Trick Room, and so the ability to reset it or reverse it seems pretty important. In addition, Musharna is just really good bulky support, and with Yawn and Ally Switch, it could provide some crucial support if I need it. Also, Musharna has a pretty good matchup against Urshifu. And that pretty much covers most of my prep. I think this is the first time this season that I've left out Regice, so that's different. And while I think that a weakness policy Regice could be really good if I could get it set up in Trick Room, I think that's a lot of boxes to check, and I'm not sure I can check all of them. I think that it's very likely that I can't guarantee speed control, and I'm not comfortable with Regice or Copperajah for that matter always having speed control. But that's my plan, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Now go check out the battle.